trying to reconnect.
Hi, this is Dave Schade. I'm Director of the Division of Agriculture here in our Palmer office. As you can see today, Rob Carter and I are back. We're talking about industrial hemp, but we did hear the feedback. We have our 6 feet, and we're going to try to keep these protocols in place. As everybody knows, we appreciate folks sending in their information by phone message and by the internet. So I want to shout out to all of the farmers markets folks that we had the conference last weekend. That was a great job done via the internet. It was really good, and I appreciated having the time to talk with all those folks. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to have Rob go through. We've got a lot of questions that kind of are a series, and so we're going to go through some of the main questions so that we do it once, and hopefully you'll be able to get your questions answered. We'll be looking on the computer here, and if we're not answering the questions, then we'll write it up. So with that, Rob, you want to tell them where we are in the program now that it's up and running?
So for everybody that missed last little live we had, we're here to talk about Alaska's Industrial Hemp Pilot Program. This program is a legal avenue for people to grow, process, or retail industrial hemp and industrial hemp-based products in the state of Alaska. It comes into compliance with both the 2014 Farm Bill, parts of the 2018, as we begin to transition over to a full-fledged industry program. We did introduce the program just over a week ago, and one thing that was we were waiting for at this point was to identify that April 4th was our regulatory effective date. So that being a Saturday, this Monday, April 6th, is when we started actually looking at and receiving the applications applied for by a bunch of folks here in the state of Alaska. So at this current time, if you go to the internet and you go to plants.alaska.gov, you can find our industrial hemp webpage, link there. It has all of our applications now available online. So if you're interested in producing, processing, or retailing industrial hemp or industrial hemp products, those applications are available to be downloaded, filled out through a fillable PDF, and then emailed back to us. In the future, we'll probably go to mail-ins or in person, but in our current climate, we're going to ask that everyone submits them there. I know that in those applications we've had a few questions, and we'll go over those today, as well as how payment options, due to our current situation, we're trying to do all payments over the phone, and at this point, once we get to your application, we will be calling you with a request for payment at that time. So I think, again, we have all of our documents online. I will hop over there on this screen here so you can kind of see where we're at. Again, if you go to Plants at Alaska, and actually I'll jump back a page for everybody here so they can see that if you go to plants.alaska.gov, it shows up to the Division of Ag's Plant Material Center's website. On the left-hand column over here, there's an industrial hemp program. If you click that, it will take you to that landing page. And from there, unless my fingers mess this up a little more, you can scroll down, and one of the things that you can see right there and what's new, our adopted regulations are there for anyone that just needs some comfort reading at this time. Quite enjoyable for those, just joking. But it does has a link to our previous Facebook Live event on there, so people can take a look at it, can see what those questions are asked, and more of an entry overview to our program. Below that, forms and resources, applications for new growers, for retailers, for processors, or a product endorsement if none of those are above or want to offer a product for sale in Alaska. So what I have done today is compile a list of questions that I've received over the last 4 days. I kind of want to run over those for everybody so that we can get those answers to the group. It'll help you with your application process, as well as help us kind of alleviate some of the calls of trying to work people through them. Again, if you have questions, please submit them to industrialhempalaska.gov. And we can't answer those, and as we follow up to do more of these live events, we'll continue to compile those and answer them for everybody, because your question may not just be needed for you, it may be needed for everyone trying to join into this industry. So one of the first questions I've received this week, and a lot of it is, can we purchase industrial hemp seeds for the 2020 production season if that individual intends to become a registered grower? Yes, you can. I will tell you that we have run into some situations with other state programs where seed distributors are saying, we will not supply seed to you until you provide us a grower registration number. So at that point, I would tell you there's two options. One, you can reach out to us through the email on this webpage, and we can contact that seed distributor and say, yes, we have accepted your application, we're going through the application process. Some have chosen to send their seeds directly to us at the division, and then we will distribute them to you. Or if that seed distributor broker is not familiar with that or uncomfortable with that, we're trying to speed through those applications so people can get a registration number to supply to those seed brokers from other states that have programs. There are some seed companies out there from states that have industrial hemp programs or pilot programs that are shipping seed without those registration numbers. So yes, you are able to go ahead and procure those seeds, get those genetics, and get them into the state and prepare for your indoor or outdoor production season for 2020. So going on from there, we again have been building these forms over the last month or so, and we've even noticed they're not perfect. So we've had a couple questions about our forms. So to clarify a few things, one question was, how do we, in the retailer application, how do we complete section 2 on page 4? And so this is a part where we looked at asking individuals that were going into the retail market to supply us the registration number for the source of the industrial hemp-based product. In here, when we built this form, we limited ourselves to requiring you to put a processor registration number. Again, this is for the retailer application, page 2, number 4. You'll see an example there where it does have in that block a processor registration number. We will be updating this form to say that we understand that other states may not have processor registrations at this point, but we would be, and again, the intent behind this is to make sure that the industrial hemp is sourced from a legal program within the states or from another country. So we will go ahead and update that to say processor or grower's number. So if you do go to retail industrial hemp-based products in the state of Alaska, if you can find the origination of that industrial hemp, if it was grown under a pilot program, they will have a registration number that can go in that block as well. And we will be updating our form. But for now, if you have this form, you filled it out, go ahead and just put the registration number of the grower from where that industrial hemp or that industrial hemp product originated. Can you apply, another question here is, people are looking at the endorsement of products and saying we can't apply for endorsement until we're a registered retailer, but we can't apply to be a registered retailer until we're having products from processors. How do you resolve this, or must we wait until Alaska Industrial Hemp is produced and processed? Yes, you can still apply, just like I previously mentioned, with putting the registration number of the industrial hemp where it originated. Just make sure that you put that grower number on that endorsement form in that line of where that hemp originated. And I think that should be, again, the intent behind that is to make sure that the industrial hemp was legally processed in another state or another country that has an approved program. From there, again, Dave will probably chime in if anybody is live now and has a question. I'm not sure how Facebook works, but go ahead and dump them a question in there and Dave will chime them in.
So Deanna asks, so we can buy from another state provided they have a process registration number? And so I would say the answer is, if it comes from another state with a pilot or permanent program, because we have 6 states with permanent programs, you can, or it can come from Canada, which has a valid program, and there may be some other areas that we will look at and make sure that they have a valid program. But it's not limited to the lower 48, it can be Canada, and we'll look at other international markets as well. I know that's something that we've looked at, and we haven't got all the way there, but if it's not from Canada or from the lower 48 programs, then reach out to us and we'll verify that that is going to be a safe market for you to import from.
Sure, and again, yes, we're stuck on that word because it asks for a processor number. We are well aware that other states, I know Utah has processor license. There's a few others out there that do. There's a lot that don't. If you cannot provide a processor's number where that industrial hemp product or derivative of industrial hemp came from, step back one step. That raw industrial hemp had and was produced by a registered grower, that number will suffice on that application. From there, we've had questions on our endorsement related questions. I'm kind of going through emails, so this one will be majority of what came from one. if a retailer misses a delivery and needs to go pick up in order of endorsed merchandise, would they need to obtain a transportation permit? So if you go on our website, you'll find that there's a transportation permit there. That's 11 AAC 4710. So yes, you are required to have a transportation permit if the product is not endorsed. But if you look at 710B, I want to say 3, there's a legal caveat to that, that you do not need an industrial hemp transport permit to move from to or from a retail registration. So if an individual has a retail license, has applied for a recent retail license, is ordering industrial hemp parts or products into the state of Alaska, and that product is not endorsed, then yes, you would have to have a transportation permit. If the product already carries an endorsement, then you would not. We need one because of the caveat in 3B, in 710B3. Sorry, got to get my legislative stuff there. So hopefully that helps. So you can, if you have an endorsement on a product, you do not need a transportation permit to go to or from a registered retailer.
So with that, I've got a question here about timeline for processing these. So I know we're prioritizing our grow applications first, then we're gonna work on our retail and also our manufacturing. So the manufacturing is gonna be a little more complex as we gotta work with the endorsements. So can you kind of give people an outline of what our timelines we think we're gonna be there, Rob?
So I will tell you, we started going through them yesterday afternoon. We had a little problem with some computer issues there with our email, making sure that they were actually up to date and they were coming in. We are processing them in the order we received them. I don't expect that we won't get through an application and call the applicant for payment more than 7 to 10 days. I just don't see it. I think that we can handle that at our current workload. So I really would like to say that today's Tuesday, most likely Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week, we will probably catch up from what was delivered this weekend, and we'll start making contact with the individuals that have submitted either growers, processors, or retail applications for payment, and then within probably 24 hours of that, you will receive a document from us. We will maintain, of course, and we recommend that you maintain a copy of your application for your business, but we will then submit you electronically if that's how you choose, or by mail, and an actual certification that gives you your registration number. That registration number will be individual to your grower application, your retail application, or your processor application, as well as if you have an endorsed product as well. So if you apply for all 3 at this point, you will end up with 3 unique identifier registration numbers that then you can continue to put on forms, put on your labeling to meet our labeling requirements, as well to carry you through the 2020 production, processing, and marketing season.
So let me interject here, Rob. So I got a question here about law enforcement, and that's a great question. So yes, there are the technicalities. We understand that. We've gone for years where all this was illegal and nobody was enforced against. And we're not going to start with enforcement. So, as we stand up the thing, if you're a registered person and you're worried about being in your car, then carry a copy of your registration in the car with you. If you're doing and moving bulk, raw product, then I would really suggest that you make sure you get your transportation permit. I think if you're just driving in your car and driving down the road and you have retail bottles, that at this point is not going to be a cause for concern. If you have a truckload of bulk product, like the poor guy in Idaho did, that will cause you some problems if you don't have your transportation permit. The thing that everybody should always know is if you have an interaction with law enforcement, request immediately that they contact the division if you're in our program, because then we can help explain to law enforcement the do's and don'ts and how we want to do that, because the enforcement responsibility comes back to us, and the law enforcement we've talked to them, they know to come to us about what is legal and what is not. And so if you're having an interaction with the police, you need us to get involved. The numbers are there, my number is there, so that's what I would want you to do, is be polite, of course, always respectful with your police officers, but ask them to get us involved, and we can help sort out any problems that you might have. So hopefully that answers the question.
I think it's a good question in the sense of a transportation permit. I think that some people have said, oh, well, I have to do this. That seems onerous, Rob. I don't want to do that. It's additional paperwork that we wouldn't have to do if it was broccoli or potatoes. The transportation permit is there to protect you. It's to protect the industry we're trying to develop, so that when you do have interactions with local law enforcement, or even a neighbor at this point, you will have, when transporting raw industrial hemp, or in bulk or in small quantities, or a product that doesn't carry a current endorsement, you will have an official document from us that you can provide if stopped or questioned, to show that this what you are transporting is industrial hemp. This is as much for us to make sure that we track unendorsed products coming into the state for safety reasons, as well as it is to protect you and make sure that you can, and this industry can develop without a lot of hiccups. So I think it's a great option for you, and make sure that you carry your registration, as Dave said, and make sure that you, if required to have a transport permit, it is required you to carry it while transporting that material.
And what we'll do, I got a question about the phone numbers. We will put on our industrial hemp site, that's an addition of some contact numbers, so that you can go on and get those numbers, because there's a whole lot of numbers for different people. So we'll put that, Rob, we can add that to our industrial hemp site. So if there's a problem, we can have numbers for people to suggest law enforcement call.
Sure, kind of looking at it right now, it is a main office number, and yes, we do get a lot of calls besides industrial hemp. So that's for seeds and for potatoes and all other parts of agriculture in the state. So we'll try to make an update to that. We'll get a note on that we can get some additional phone numbers, or maybe even an after hours phone number, so that if you do run into a situation where you need clarification that you are a registrant, that you're legally transporting or retailing, processing, or producing industrial hemp, you have an avenue to get a hold of somebody in a relatively quick fashion to try to make this as painless as possible. So we'll make that note, and we'll see if we can get that updated.
Right. So the good question here, so where are the processing markets? Are they here in Alaska or other states? So let's talk about what we know a little bit on our markets. As far as processing goes, Rob?
I think that if you look at this, I think this being a new industry, I think we have a lot of potential to have processors in the state. We know that there are processing facilities in the state of Alaska, even though I'll bet they're not processing industrial hemp at this time, because we haven't produced any, which technically, if you get a permit this week, on 120 days from today, we might have our first industrial hemp crop. So there are the capabilities to process in Alaska. There are some very scientific ones, and if those individuals or businesses choose to join this program, become a registrant, they will be able to process. There's a lot of out-of-state people processing. There's very expensive ways, from supercritical CO2 to using ice baths and water. So, and those options are available through our processor. In our regs, you can see what we've defined as what we call a legal avenue for a processor to use. Or if it's something that's not on that list that we may not have called out directly in the regulations, you can submit to us, to the division, hey, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to register as a processor, and this is my process. It's not outlined in the regulations, and we most likely, if it's well defined, we can approve that process for you. Those caveats are in the regulations. So there are the capabilities to process raw industrial hemp into a multitude of other products in the state of Alaska. We all know that Alaskans are pretty ingenuitive, so we're going to come up with new things, I'm sure, as they do. This processing is changing weekly, if not daily, across the country on better ways to create or process raw industrial hemp to distillates or isolates, and to make extractions from it. And that's one section. And then we have the entire fiber and grain market, if that chooses to be, once we get there. So I do believe they are here. We can't force businesses to say, hey, you're going to process industrial hemp because you have the capabilities. But I do see that there's a business opportunity here. We know that the equipment is here, and hopefully we'll have those registrants come online in the coming days or weeks. And it'll give an avenue for people that are growers that do have, that aren't going to be vertically integrated and grow, process, and market their own product. They'll actually build an offload raw product to a processor and then have it move from there.
Right. We got about 10 minutes, Rob, so
right.
let's
Race
make
a few
sure
more
you
questions.
get the main questions done, and then if we got a few more, we'll try to wrap it up. We're going to be happy to do these weekly until we make sure we've got all the questions asked. So, Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, we're probably going to be on a routine basis on. So get the questions in. We're going to keep coming on and doing these public meetings until we've met the need to answer the questions. And this is just a lot better way for us to answer the questions, so that Rob doesn't spend all his time answering one-on-one questions, because
I'm still more than willing to do that, but let's try to get them so everybody can benefit.
Right.
We're trying to grow an industry.
So the idea is, if you got a technical question, then we'll get back with you. But if you got the generic questions, we're going to try to do our best to get this information back out in a group, so that we're not answering the same question with 6 people. So
Sure.
It's a balancing act that we're trying to do, because we've got a lot of other things other than Industrial Hemp Program to stand up right now. So go ahead.
So if a company wants to import CBD products from other states, is that company allowed to provide, provided it first obtains an endorsement in advance? Yeah, a registered retailer could import industrial hemp-based products, CBD being one of them, and offer that for sale once that product is endorsed. So kind of follow up there. If the company can do this, what information is required under the processor name and registration? Again, that unique line there that we have a processor. Go back to where I said in the beginning, rewind this video real quick, and you'll see that we will accept a grower or origination of where that industrial hemp came from if that program doesn't have a processor license. Let's run through here. Industrial hemp product sellers and manufacturers in other states, how do we prepare our labels specific to products to meet our labeling requirements in Alaska? If you go to our website, scroll down to forms and resources, you will see an example of a label. It is very specific. This is not a real label. We just made it up to put everything on it. There are 8 things that we require at this point. And so what we will do from there is, if you go on and grab this, you will identify everything that is required on industrial hemp-based products for the state of Alaska. So I think these are very standard in industry. We have things like a product name and a batch number for the product of where it was processed. I will tell you that anybody processing industrial hemp is creating batch numbers for their own protection as well as the consumer. An expiration date, total quantity of the product within that. Those are federal kind of labeling laws, so we'll make sure that those are on there. A list of all ingredients. Where the industrial hemp originated, so if it came from Colorado, Colorado should be on the label. And I think one of the most important things, and I think for this industry and for the people involved in this industry as well as the consumers, is the requirement to say that if it is full spectrum, that people call contains THC, it needs to state on the label, warning, contains THC. Again, doesn't have to be in the exact format how I wrote this example. I think we will look at intent of this as much as anything. Does it have, I don't care if it's in milligrams, ounces, or fluid ounces, does it have a total volume? Does it have a brand name? Does it have a lot number or batch number that follows it back for traceability? That's what we care about, the intent of trying to make sure that we're protecting the producers, the retailers, the processors, and the consumers. Right. So pretty easy question there, I think.
You had a good question the other day from somebody that was bringing batches and then breaking it down. So why don't you give them a brief rundown of how it would be smart to make sure that you do your testing of your main batch before you break it apart? Sure.
So we did have a question of that. I think I answered maybe that one somewhere. But in all sense, if someone was importing a processed industrial hemp product, let's say that it was in isolate or distillate or a tincture form, and it was in a 3-gallon drum, it would be in the best interest for yourself and for the paperwork and for us, endorse the industrial hemp. We don't care what flavor you put into it. We don't care and what your brand name is. That's your decision. But if you endorse that base product, and for example, CBD, and then that product, that base product was going to be incorporated into a multitude of other products. Save yourself the time and the money, endorse your base product. If you use that same product that has the same batch number one time with an endorsement, and then it can be included into a multitude of other products you choose to create and market in the state of Alaska, and as long as that batch number follows through on all the labeling, you've legally met the requirements of this. And I think it's very important because majority of the people out there that utilize industrial hemp derivatives for final products use the same base product or CBD or industrial hemp based derivative through multitudes, if it's a lotion or if it's a salve or if it's a tincture. So you can endorse that base product and then put it in a multitude of other products. And I think that would be wise for you as a business, and I think it would be sure expedite things on our half. One more thing, like based on our last Facebook Live event, we're pretty enthusiastic about this. Yes, we are.
Yeah, we really are.
I think it's a great opportunity. I know the director does for another agricultural industry in the state. We know a lot of people at this point utilize industrial hemp-based products for a multitude of different things, including wellness, and we want to make that available for our growers, our processors, and our retailers. Give them a legal, both federally and state way to do that. Try to develop another industry for Alaska, people to generate revenue. So we are excited about that. Looks like it's a two-part question. If at this time a company is trying to determine what products it wants to process using, for example, CBD extract that it will obtain from an out-of-state, how can we go about obtaining the extract? You could make that order. You could endorse the product before you came to Alaska, make sure that it met our testing requirements, and then from there we can provide an endorsement, and that product can come in. Then you don't have to have a transportation permit, and then it's met all of our legal requirements. Or you can order that product and bring it in the state, apply for a transportation permit, get it, and then go through the endorsement process. So that is there. Is there minimum or maximum amounts of industrial hemp or hemp products one could bring into the state? No, there's not. I would tell you bring them in maximum quantities and endorse the largest amount you can so that you could limit the amount of endorsements that you'd have to register for, apply for, and pay for. And then it says 11 AAC 4665, that's our waste section for industrial hemp waste and byproducts of the processing. We don't have any other non-division of ag references on the website at this time. We will. We are looking for them once this question came in, but I think that being agricultural people and making sure that we want to limit the amount of green waste that goes into our landfills, there is a list of things that you can follow in 4665 that you can take industrial hemp waste, leftover parts, floral material, mix that 1-to-1, make it unrecognizable, and then compost it. We have a form that you can fill out for your disposal of your industrial hemp or industrial hemp waste, but I would rather see it go into the compost pile, rendered that it's unrecognizable and difficult to separate, than it be bagged up or double bagged up and moved to the landfill. If there's another avenue that you feel that we did not hit in our regulations or don't give you that avenue, you can write to us, send us an email and say, here's a waste disposal method that I would like to do on my property or on another property, and we will approve that in writing back to you if we feel that it's feasible and it meets our regulations. From there, are there any requirements for storage locations in terms of parameters, for example, signage, temperature control? No, there's actually nothing specific except what's required in your application. Map, identification, showing your entry points, and so we do not have anything specific to storing this industrial hemp as an agricultural crop. So it's up to you to protect your investment. It's up to you to make sure that it's in the right storage conditions, right humidity conditions, but those do, of course, have to be labeled on your application and provided to us in your map. That pretty much runs through all the questions that I've got in the last 48 hours. So we will continue to compile these as they come in. Please send them again to alaska.industrialhemp@alaska.gov. Send us questions. We'll compile them here. We will try to respond to most of them email to you individually, but we will also go ahead and bring them back to another Facebook Live event so we can share those questions with all the potential industry out here. So again, your question, all questions are great questions, but your question might also help someone else out in the process. Again, please go to the website, look at the information there, download the applications, start going through those applications and then derive your questions from there as you start to work through that process.
Yeah, we got one final question about labeling, and should prepare the label specific to the product sold in Alaska prior to submitting the product for an endorsement, so that we don't have to first do an application for endorsement and then subsequently submit a modification of endorsement showing the new label.
Yes, I think that if you go and look, and for the thousands of industrial hemp-based products that I've looked at around there, majority of the things that we require in our regulations for labels are actually on them. Some do or don't. If they're full spectrum products, say that they contain THC. That's a must. They might not have a list of ingredients. I would recommend that before you endorse a product, or from out of state, in state, or once we have products processed in state, before you go and make a 10,000 batch order of labels, make sure that you look at this example, ask us any questions, send us to that specific would this. I know that all labeling gets approved. Send us one.
Yep.
We'll take a look at it for you and say, yes, it meets our labeling requirements. If you can't do this and this material comes in bulk and you're gonna go the route to import that into the state of Alaska prior to getting an endorsement, along with a transportation permit to move it back to your facility, get it there, develop your logo, even if it's on a napkin from the coffee shop. Well, don't go in them right now. Send it to us, send us a copy of that. We'll validate that and say, yes, this is great, but I would prepare as much as you can prior to getting that endorsement so we can alleviate any onerous modifications. That modification request form is there for, oops, this happened, it doesn't exactly say that, does it meet the intent of the regulations, and is it acceptable from the division?
Right, so thank you very much. We're running a little over our half hour. We're gonna try to keep these at half hours because we know people are really busy. But thanks again for watching, and until next week, thanks much.
Take care.